You've been living with a stranger all your life. You wake up next to this stranger. You see them in the mirror every morning. You hear their voice in your head constantly. And yet, you don't really know them at all. That stranger is you. Have you ever had that feeling, maybe late at night, when you can't sleep, that you're wearing a mask? That the person everyone sees, the person you show to the world, isn't quite real? That somewhere beneath all the performance, all the roles you play, there's someone else entirely, someone you've never fully met. You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're actually catching a glimpse of something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You're sensing the vast territory of yourself that lies hidden beneath ordinary consciousness. In the early 1900s, a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung stood at the edge of his own abyss. Successful career, respected colleague of Freud. By all appearances, he had everything figured out. Then his world shattered. He began experiencing visions, hearing voices, feeling like he was going insane. His patients came to him with their madness, and he discovered the same madness churning inside himself. Most people would have run from this, medicated it away, buried it deeper. Jung did something radical. He dove in. He descended into his own unconscious, like a deep sea diver exploring an ocean trench. And what he found there changed everything we understand about the human psyche. The journey began after his break with Freud in 1913. Jung was 38 years old. The split wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Freud had been like a father to him, and now that relationship was destroyed. Jung fell into what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years, he deliberately explored his inner world, recording visions, dialoguing with inner figures, painting images that emerged from his depths. His colleagues thought he was losing his mind. His wife worried. His children saw their father disappear into his study for hours, engaging with invisible presences. But Jung knew something crucial. He wasn't going mad, he was going deep. He was exploring territory that psychology had always theorized about, but never directly entered. He kept journals that would later become the Red Book, a massive tome filled with calligraphic text and vivid paintings. In these pages, he encountered figures from his unconscious. A wise old man he called Philemon. A feminine presence he named Salome. These weren't hallucinations in the clinical sense. They were personifications of archetypal forces within his own psyche, messengers from the collective unconscious. During this period, Jung discovered something revolutionary. The spiritually awake don't see something that isn't there. They don't have access to some mystical realm invisible to ordinary people. No. What they see is what's already there, hidden in plain sight. They see deeper. They see the 95% of the iceberg that exists beneath the water's surface. Think about that for a moment. 95% of who you are operates completely outside your awareness. Your conscious mind, that little voice you think of as you, is just the tip. Beneath it lies an entire cosmos of memories, instincts, patterns, wounds, gifts, and possibilities that you've never explored. Most people mistake their persona for their true self. The persona is your social mask, the character you play in the world. The responsible employee, the good parent, the loyal friend, the strong one, the smart one, the funny one. These roles aren't false exactly, but they're partial. They're the edited version of you, the public relations department of your psyche. Jung himself wore many personas. The successful psychiatrist, the brilliant theorist, the respectable Swiss professional. But beneath these roles lived something far stranger and more powerful. A man who conversed with spirits, who painted mandalas, who took mythology and alchemy as seriously as medical science. The persona kept him functioning in society. The deeper self drove his genius. The spiritually awake have made a dangerous journey. They've ventured past the persona down into the depths, discovered they're not who they thought they were. They're infinitely stranger, darker, richer, and more magnificent than the character they've been playing. This isn't comfortable knowledge. There's a reason most people avoid it. When Jung descended into his unconscious, he didn't find peace and light and blissful oneness. He found chaos. He found terror. He found aspects of himself that horrified him. He drew pictures of his visions in what would become the Red Book images, so disturbing that he kept them hidden for decades. In one vision, he saw Europe drowning in blood. This was 1914, right before World War I erupted. He thought he was having premonitions of his own madness. Instead, he was tapping into the collective unconscious, sensing the violence brewing in the European psyche. The madness wasn't just his. It was collective. Personal and transpersonal forces were converging, but he also found something else. He found that the darkness contained gold, that the parts of himself he'd been running from held the keys to his creativity, his power, his wholeness. He discovered that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This phrase, this single insight, changed the trajectory of Western psychology. Before Jung, enlightenment was about transcendence, rising above the darkness, becoming pure and light and good. Jung said no. Real awakening happens when you descend, when you turn and face what you've been fleeing, when you befriend your demons rather than trying to kill them. That's the journey we're about to take together. Not a comfortable one, not an easy one, but necessary. Because on the other side of this exploration lies something you've been searching for your entire life: freedom from the prison of who you think you're supposed to be. Before we dive into these depths together, if this resonates with something stirring in your soul, hit that like button and subscribe. This journey needs fellow travelers, people brave enough to look beneath the surface. Your support helps this message reach other souls who need to hear it. Now let's begin to see what the spiritually awake see. The first thing spiritually awake people see is their own darkness clearly and without flinching. This is what Jung called the shadow, and it's one of the most revolutionary concepts in psychology. Your shadow isn't evil. It's not some demonic force trying to destroy you. It's simply everything about yourself that you've denied, rejected, or hidden away. Every quality you were told was unacceptable. Every impulse you learned to suppress, every part of yourself you cut off to be loved, to be accepted, to survive. When you were a child, you came into this world whole. You had anger, joy, sadness, sexuality, aggression, tenderness, wildness, gentleness, all of it. Then the world began to teach you which parts were acceptable and which weren't. Maybe your family couldn't handle your anger, so you learned to swallow it. Maybe your sensitivity was mocked, so you armored over it. Maybe your confidence was seen as arrogance, so you dimmed your light. Piece by piece, you took the unacceptable parts and stuffed them into a bag. Jung imagined this bag we drag behind us growing heavier every year, filled with all the parts of ourselves we've disowned. This is the shadow. Here's what makes the shadow so powerful and so dangerous. Those rejected parts don't disappear. They don't die, they go underground and gain power there. They leak out in unconscious ways, they sabotage your relationships, they emerge as compulsions and addictions. They get projected onto other people. Think about projection for a moment. It's one of the most common psychological mechanisms, and most people are completely unaware they're doing it. You take an aspect of yourself you can't accept and unconsciously attribute it to someone else. Then you react to them as if they're the problem. You know that person who absolutely irritates you, the one whose very presence makes your blood boil. They're showing you your shadow. That quality you despise in them is something you've disowned in yourself. The liar you can't stand mirrors your own dishonesty you won't admit. The arrogant person who triggers you reflects your own hidden grandiosity. The weak person you judge carries your disowned vulnerability. This is hard to hear. Your ego doesn't want to believe it. But awakened people understand this truth deeply. They've realized something profound. They're capable of anything human. Every quality exists somewhere within them. Kindness and cruelty, generosity and greed, love and hatred, courage and cowardice. To claim otherwise is to live in dangerous delusion. Jung had a patient, once a woman, who considered herself a paragon of moral virtue. She came to therapy complaining about her terrible neighbor who was having an affair. She couldn't stop talking about this neighbor's immorality. Session after session, the same story. Jung finally asked her to examine her own marriage, her own desires. She was horrified. But gradually she admitted she'd been having fantasies about a man at her church. She'd projected her own unacknowledged desires onto her neighbor and judged them viciously. The moment she acknowledged her own capacity for desire outside her marriage, her obsession with her neighbor evaporated. She didn't have an affair, but she stopped needing to judge someone else for what she wouldn't admit in herself. When Jung explored his own shadow, he discovered impulses toward violence, megalomania, even madness. During his confrontation with the unconscious, he encountered what he called his number 2 personality, a dark, ancient, powerful aspect of himself that felt almost like a different person. This figure was connected to Earth, to instinct, to power. Everything his rational, civilized persona had rejected. He didn't act on these impulses, but he stopped pretending they didn't exist. And something miraculous happened. The moment he acknowledged them, they lost their compulsive power over him. The shadow only controls you when you refuse to see it. There's gold in that darkness. Your shadow doesn't just contain the bad things you've rejected. It contains your lost power, your hidden gifts, your unexpressed creativity. Many people have rejected their strength because it was called aggressive, their intelligence because it was called showing off, their beauty because it was called vanity, their ambition because it was called selfish. A man might have been taught that sensitivity is weakness, so he buried his tender heart in the shadow. Years later, he can't connect emotionally with his children. A woman might have been taught that anger is unladylike, so she swallowed her rage. Now she's passive-aggressive and wonders why people don't respect her boundaries. The qualities we reject don't disappear, they just show up sideways. When you reclaim your shadow, you reclaim your energy. You stop wasting power, maintaining the illusion of who you think you should be. You become dangerous in the best way, authentically, unpredictably wholly yourself. The second thing spiritually awake people see is the symbolic dimension of reality. While most people experience life as a series of random events, the awakened recognize that life is constantly speaking to them in the language of symbols. Dreams were Jung's gateway into this understanding. He realized that dreams aren't random neurological static. They're letters from your unconscious self, written in the ancient language of symbol and metaphor. Your psyche is trying to communicate something your conscious mind doesn't yet understand. When you dream of being chased, something in you is trying to tell you what you're running from. When you dream of falling, you're being shown where you've lost your ground. When you dream of someone dying, something is transforming. The unconscious doesn't speak in literal terms. It speaks in images, feelings, stories. Jung once worked with a patient who kept dreaming of climbing a mountain. The man was a successful businessman climbing the corporate ladder, achieving every marker of success. But the dreams grew darker. The mountain became steeper. He was exhausted in the dreams. Finally, he dreamed he reached the summit, and there was nothing there, just emptiness. The dream was trying to tell him something his conscious mind refused to see. His ambition was hollow. He was climbing the wrong mountain. Within a year of that final dream, he had a heart attack. His body forced him to stop what his psyche had been trying to communicate all along. But it's not just dreams. The awakened see symbolic meaning everywhere. They notice what books fall off the shelf at just the right moment, what songs play when they're struggling with a decision, what animals appear when they're at a crossroads. They recognize patterns that most people dismiss as coincidence. This isn't superstition. It's a different way of engaging with reality. The literal mind sees a tree and thinks, that's a tree. Photosynthesis produces oxygen, good for shade. The symbolic mind sees that same tree and receives a teaching about rootedness, seasonal cycles reaching toward light while staying grounded in earth. Why are you obsessed with that particular movie? Why does that song bring you to tears every time? Why can't you stop thinking about a certain person? The awakened understand these aren't random preferences. You're drawn to these things because they're carrying something for you, a projection, an unfulfilled aspect of yourself, a message from the depths. Carl Jung empath and personal development intersect beautifully in this symbolic awareness. When you develop the capacity to read the symbolic dimension, you become more empathic, more attuned to the hidden meanings in human behavior and experience. The third vision that separates the awakened from the sleeping is the recognition of the collective unconscious. This might be Jung's most radical insight. He proposed that beneath your personal unconscious, beneath your individual memories and experiences, there's a deeper layer you share with all humanity. Imagine the psyche like an ocean. On the surface, each wave appears separate individual. That's your ego consciousness. Just below the surface is your personal unconscious, your own memories and repressed experiences. But deeper still at the bottom of the ocean, the water is shared. This is the collective unconscious. This explains something mysterious. Why do the same symbols appear in cultures that never contacted each other? Why does the image of the Great Mother appear in ancient Greece, indigenous America, Asian mythology, and African folklore? Why do certain stories, the hero's journey, the wise old man, the trickster, the virgin birth repeat? Across human history, Jung traveled extensively studying the myths and symbols of different cultures. He visited Native American pueblos in New Mexico. He journeyed to Africa and India. Everywhere he went, he found the same archetypal patterns expressed in different cultural forms. The hero who leaves home faces trials and returns transformed. The divine child, the terrible mother, the wise elder, these weren't copied from each other. They emerged from the collective psyche of humanity. Jung called these universal patterns archetypes. They're like psychic organs we're all born with. Just as every human body has a heart and lungs, every human psyche contains these archetypal structures. They're the ancient operating system running beneath your modern software. When you watch a movie that moves you to tears, when a myth grabs you by the throat, when a story feels like it's about you, even though you've never lived it, you're experiencing archetypal resonance. You're recognizing something older than your lifetime patterns that have been living through human beings for thousands of years. The spiritually awake understand they're not living a purely personal life. They're living an archetypal story. Right now, certain archetypal energies are constellated in your life. Maybe you're in the warrior phase fighting for something. Maybe you're in the caregiver archetype learning about service. Maybe the sage is trying to emerge in you, calling you toward wisdom. Maybe you're wrestling with the shadow king or queen facing power and responsibility. This recognition changes everything. Your struggles aren't just your struggles. Your journey isn't just your journey. You're participating in patterns that echo through all of human experience. There's something deeply comforting in this. You're not alone. Your suffering, your joy, your transformation. These belong to the eternal human story. The mother who sacrificed everything for her children is living an ancient pattern. The man who had to leave home to find himself is walking the hero's journey. The person who lost everything and had to rebuild is experiencing the death and rebirth archetype. These patterns give meaning to your experience. But here's where it gets tricky. You can be possessed by an archetype without knowing it. You can identify so completely with the hero that you're always looking for dragons to slay, even when rest is what's needed. You can be so caught in the victim archetype that you can't see your own power. You can be so inflated with the sage that you become insufferable. The awakened person doesn't just recognize these patterns. They develop a relationship with them. They can feel when an archetype is active, when the lover is rising, when the warrior needs to step back, when the wise one wants to speak. They're not blindly driven by these forces. They're conscious participants in the dance. This is the beginning of awakening. Seeing your shadow, reading the symbolic dimension, recognizing the archetypal patterns. But these are just the first layers. The depths go much further. Let's talk about something that might disturb you. The person you call I, the one thinking these thoughts right now, the one who woke up this morning and said, "I need to get up." That's not who you really are. It's just a small committee member that thinks it's running the whole organization. Jung made a crucial distinction that most people never grasp. There's the ego, your conscious personality, the part you identify with. Then there's the self, the totality of your psyche, conscious and unconscious together. The ego is tiny. The self is vast. Think of it this way. Your ego is like a boat floating on the ocean. The boat is important. It keeps you dry. It gets you places. But the boat is not the ocean. The ego makes a catastrophic mistake. It thinks it's the whole thing. It thinks it's in control. It believes its tiny perspective is reality itself. The spiritually awake have discovered they're not the boat. They're the ocean, or more precisely, they're the awareness in which both the boat and the ocean appear. This shifts everything. Your ego wants to be in control. It wants security, recognition, comfort. It's constantly trying to arrange life to its preferences. It divides the world into like and dislike, want and don't want, me and not me. And it suffers enormously because life won't conform to its demands. The self has entirely different concerns. The self wants wholeness, not happiness. It wants truth, not comfort. It wants you to become who you really are, not who you wish you were. And often what the self requires feels like disaster to the ego. You lose your job. Your ego sees catastrophe. The self might be liberating you from a path that was killing your soul. Your relationship ends. Your ego grieves the loss. The self might be clearing space for real intimacy to emerge. You get sick. Your ego fears death. The self might be forcing you to slow down and listen. This doesn't mean suffering is good or that you shouldn't try to avoid pain. It means there's an intelligence operating beneath your conscious understanding, and that intelligence is working towards your individuation. Individuation. This was Jung's term for the central task of human life. It means becoming wholly, completely, uniquely yourself. Not the self your parents wanted, not the self society approved of, not the self your ego imagined. Your real self with all its contradictions and complexity and strangeness. Most people never individuate. They live borrowed lives. They follow scripts written by their culture, their family, their time period. They become who they're supposed to be rather than who they are. They choose safety over truth, convention over authenticity. There's a heartbreaking moment Jung described. A successful middle-aged man comes to him perfectly adjusted to society. Good job, good family, respected in the community. But something is dying inside him. He's achieved everything he was supposed to achieve and feels empty. Why? Because he never asked himself what he actually wanted. He lived someone else's life. This is what Jung called the midlife crisis. Though he didn't mean it in the trivial modern sense. He meant a genuine crisis of meaning that often strikes in the second half of life. You've followed all the rules, you've checked all the boxes, and suddenly you wake up and realize you don't know who you are beneath all those accomplishments. Individuation requires courage. It means you'll disappoint people. You'll confuse people who thought they knew you. You'll lose friends who were only friends with your persona. You'll face periods of profound loneliness as you separate from collective values and discover your own. But it's not selfish. In fact, it's the opposite. The most dangerous people are those who haven't individuated, who are unconsciously driven by collective patterns, who project their unexamined darkness onto others. The person who has done their inner work, who has faced their shadow, who has listened to their self, they become a gift to the world. Think of it like an acorn. The acorn contains within it the pattern of the oak tree it's meant to become. It doesn't try to become a rose or a pine. It follows its inner blueprint. That's individuation. Becoming the oak you were always meant to be, not trying to be someone else's idea of a tree. This brings us to one of Jung's most subtle insights, the compensatory function of the unconscious. Your psyche is self-regulating. It's always trying to balance you. When your conscious life goes too far in one direction, your unconscious compensates by pulling the other way. If you're too inflated, too identified with your own greatness, you'll have dreams of humiliation or smallness. If you're too deflated, too caught in victimhood, you'll have dreams of power and capability. This is why spiritual people often have dark dreams. Someone spends all day being loving and peaceful and positive. At night, they dream of violence, rage, destruction. Their psyche is saying, hey, you're leaving something out. There's a denied force here that needs acknowledgement. Jung worked with a minister once who had violent dreams that disturbed him deeply. The man spent his days preaching love and forgiveness. At night, he dreamed of murder and revenge. He thought something was terribly wrong with him. Jung explained that his conscious attitude was too one-sided. By denying his capacity for aggression, for setting boundaries, for saying no, he'd pushed it entirely into the unconscious. The dreams were trying to restore balance. The awakened person understands this. They don't just try to eliminate their symptoms. They ask what the symptom is trying to communicate. The anxiety isn't just a disorder to medicate away. It's a message. The depression isn't just a chemical imbalance to fix. It's the psyche saying something important about how you're living. Your compulsion to check your phone constantly, what's that about? Your addiction to work, what are you avoiding? Your pattern of choosing unavailable partners, what does that protect you from? The awakened person dialogues with these patterns rather than just fighting them. This requires a radical shift in perspective. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as meaningful. Every symptom is symbolic. Every pattern is purposeful. Not in the sense that you consciously chose it, but in the sense that your psyche is trying to tell you something through it. Now we come to one of Jung's most controversial and fascinating ideas, synchronicity. This is where many people think Jung went too far, got too mystical. But stay with me. Synchronicity is the experience of meaningful coincidence. Two events occur that have no causal connection, but are connected by meaning. The classic example from Jung's own life, he was treating a woman whose rational mind was so rigid that therapy wasn't progressing. She told him a dream about a golden scarab beetle. At that exact moment, a real scarab beetle, extremely rare in Switzerland, tapped on his window. Jung caught it and showed it to her. The shock of this impossible coincidence broke through her rigid rationality, and therapy could finally proceed. These are the moments when the universe seems to wink at you. You think of someone you haven't talked to in years, and they call that day. You need an answer to a question and open a book to exactly the right page. You're struggling with a decision, and a stranger says something that speaks directly to your situation. Most people dismiss these as mere coincidence. The awakened pay attention, not in a superstitious way, not assigning meaning to everything, but recognizing that sometimes the inner and outer worlds align in ways that defy probability. Jung proposed something radical. Mind and matter aren't as separate as we think. There's a unified field where psyche and world interpenetrate. Meaning can connect events even when causation doesn't. The universe isn't just mechanical, it's meaningful. He spent years developing this theory, working with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. They propose that at the deepest level, matter and psyche are two aspects of one underlying reality. In moments of synchronicity, this unity becomes visible. The boundary between inner and outer becomes permeable. When you're aligned with yourself, when you're on your true path, synchronicities increase. The world seems to conspire to help you, not because you're special or because you've mastered some secret, but because when you're living authentically, you're in harmony with the deeper patterns of reality. The spiritually awake live in this responsive universe. They notice the language the world speaks. They follow the thread of meaningful coincidence. They trust that when they're aligned with their deeper purpose, the path will reveal itself step by step. This isn't passive. It's not sitting around waiting for signs. It's living actively while remaining open to guidance from the depths. It's having a plan while staying flexible when synchronicity suggests another direction. So what does all this mean, practically? How do you actually work with these insights? That's where we're going next. Because understanding is just the beginning. Transformation requires practice. Let's get practical. You can have all the insights in the world, but without practice, they're just interesting ideas. Jung didn't just theorize about the psyche. He developed methods for engaging with it directly. These are practices that the spiritually awake use to continue deepening their relationship with the unconscious. Shadow work is first because it's foundational. You cannot skip this step. Every attempt to transcend the ego, to reach higher consciousness, to become enlightened will fail if you haven't faced your shadow. The shadow that's not acknowledged becomes the shadow that runs your life. Here's a simple but powerful practice Jung would use with patients. It's called the mirror technique. Make a list of the people who irritate you most, the ones who make your skin crawl, the ones who trigger instant judgment. Next to each name, write down the qualities about them that bother you. Arrogant, weak, dishonest, needy, controlling, fake, selfish, whatever comes up. Now here's the hard part. Those qualities, they're in you. Not in the exact same way, maybe. But somewhere in your psyche, these disowned aspects exist. The arrogance you judge might be your own hidden grandiosity that you've repressed. The weakness you despise might be your own vulnerability you won't allow. This is uncomfortable. Your ego will fight this. It will say, no, not me. I'm not like that. But stay with the discomfort. Ask yourself honestly, where does this quality show up in my life? Even in small ways. Where have I been dishonest? Where have I been selfish? Where have I been weak? As you acknowledge these qualities, something remarkable happens. They lose their power to control you. The shadow only has control when it's unconscious. The moment you see it, you have choice. But shadow work isn't just about the negative qualities you've rejected. It's also about the positive ones. Many people have shadow gold gifts and strengths they've buried because they were told those qualities were bad. Maybe you've hidden your intelligence because being smart wasn't cool. Maybe you've suppressed your strength because being powerful was seen as unfeminine or threatening. Maybe you've dimmed your light because shining was called showing off. That's all in the shadow too. The practice, make another list. What qualities do you admire intensely in others? What makes you feel a pang of envy? Creative, confident, free-spirited, bold, compassionate. Whatever it is, those qualities are also yours, waiting to be reclaimed. Ask yourself the 3 a.m. questions. These are the questions that come in the middle of the night when your defenses are down. What am I most ashamed of? What truth am I avoiding? What would I do if I weren't afraid? What do I know but pretend not to know? Your answers to these questions will lead you directly to your shadow, and in that shadow, you'll find the energy you've been missing, the creativity that's been blocked, the power you've been seeking outside yourself. The second essential practice is dream work. Your dreams are like letters from your unconscious self, arriving every night, usually ignored or forgotten. The spiritually awake read these letters. Start simply. Keep a dream journal by your bed. The moment you wake up, before you do anything else, write down whatever you remember. Don't worry about making sense of it. Just record the images, feelings fragments. Over time, patterns will emerge. Recurring dreams are especially important. They're like the unconscious sending registered mail demanding attention. That dream where you're back in school unprepared for an exam. That dream where your teeth fall out. That dream where you're trying to run but can't move. These aren't random. They're pointing to something. Don't get too caught up in dream dictionaries that tell you water means emotion or flying means freedom. Your unconscious speaks in personal symbols. Water might mean one thing to you and something entirely different to someone who nearly drowned as a child. Instead, ask yourself, how did this dream make me feel? What situation in my waking life evokes this same feeling? What is this dream trying to show me about where I am right now? Jung developed a practice called active imagination. This is where you take a dream image and continue engaging with it while awake. Let's say you dreamed of a dark figure pursuing you. Instead of just analyzing it intellectually, you enter a meditative state and imaginatively continue the dream. You turn and face the figure. You ask what it wants. You allow it to speak. This isn't fantasy. It's a dialogue with aspects of your psyche that don't have direct access to consciousness. And what emerges can be astonishing. That terrifying pursuer might reveal itself as a wounded part of you that desperately needs attention. The monster becomes the messenger. Jung himself used this technique extensively during his confrontation with the unconscious. He would sit in his study, enter a meditative state, and allow figures to emerge. He conversed with them, argued with them, learned from them. Philemon, the wise old man, taught him about the reality of the psyche. Salome represented aspects of the feminine he'd rejected. These weren't imaginary friends. They were autonomous complexes, parts of his psyche with their own intelligence. Carl Jung empath and personal development come together powerfully in dream work. As you learn the language of your own unconscious, you become more attuned to the symbolic communications of others. You develop empathy for the hidden struggles people carry. The third practice is learning to recognize archetypal patterns as they operate in your life. Right now, certain archetypes are constellated in your psyche. They're the main characters in your current life chapter. Ask yourself, which archetype am I living? Am I in the warrior phase, fighting for something, defending boundaries, engaging conflict? Am I in the lover phase, opening to intimacy, feeling deeply, merging with another? Am I in the sage phase, seeking wisdom, pulling back from action, contemplating meaning? Maybe you're living the wounded healer archetype, someone whose own suffering has given them the capacity to help others heal. Maybe you're in the outcast phase, separated from the collective, discovering who you are outside group identity. Maybe the mother or father archetype is dominant as you care for others or deal with your own parents. None of these is better or worse. They're different energies, different seasons of the soul. The key is consciousness. When you know which archetype is active, you can work with it instead of being blindly driven by it. The danger is archetypal possession. This is when you become so identified with an archetype that you can't see anything else. The person who's all warrior has to make everything a battle. The person who's all caregiver can't receive care. The person who's all sage gets stuck in their head and can't act. The practice is to recognize the archetype, honor what it's teaching you, and stay flexible enough to move to another pattern when the time comes. Life isn't one archetypal story. It's a series of stories, each teaching something necessary. This is especially important in relationships. You and your partner are both carrying archetypal energies. Are you mother and son, father and daughter, two warriors fighting for dominance? Hero and victim in a rescuing dance. When you can see the archetypal pattern, you can step out of it and relate person to person. The fourth practice is working with synchronicity. This requires a delicate balance. You want to be open to meaningful coincidence without falling into magical thinking where everything is a sign and you're not taking responsibility for your life. The practice is simple, but requires attention. Notice, when something strange happens, when a coincidence strikes you, don't just blow past it. Pause. What was I just thinking about? What question was I holding? Does this connect to something going on in my inner world? Record these moments. Keep a synchronicity journal. Over time, you'll start to see patterns in when synchronicities occur. Often they cluster around periods of transition, decision points, times when you're aligned with your deeper purpose, or when you're lost and need guidance. Then comes the tricky part. How do you respond? Synchronicity isn't telling you what to do. It's not a command from the universe. It's more like a whisper, a hint, an invitation to pay attention to something. If you keep seeing images of a certain place, maybe it's worth investigating why that place is calling you. If a book falls off the shelf, maybe it's worth reading. If you keep meeting people who talk about the same theme, maybe that theme wants your attention. But maintain discernment. Not every coincidence is meaningful. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, as Freud supposedly said. The key is the feeling tone. Meaningful synchronicities have a quality of resonance, a recognition, a sense of rightness. They give you energy rather than making you anxious or obsessive. The fifth practice is the most subtle and perhaps most important. It's learning to dialogue with the self. Remember, the self is that deeper center of your psyche, the totality that includes but transcends the ego. This requires developing a contemplative practice. Meditation works. Prayer works. Long walks in nature work. Anything that quiets the ego's constant chatter and allows something deeper to emerge. In this quiet space, you ask questions, not to your thinking mind, but to your deeper wisdom. What does life want from me right now? What am I being called toward? What am I resisting? Not in a demanding way, but with genuine curiosity and openness. Then you listen. Not for words necessarily, though. Sometimes words come. Sometimes it's an image. Sometimes a feeling. Sometimes a knowing that emerges from silence. This is the voice of the self, and it sounds different from the ego's voice. The ego's voice is anxious, demanding, comparing, judging. It says, I want, and I should, and why can't I? The self's voice is quieter, but more certain. It doesn't argue. It simply shows you the next step. Learning to distinguish these voices takes time. You'll make mistakes. You'll think the ego is the self, and the self is the ego. But gradually, with practice, you develop sensitivity. You learn to recognize the quality of guidance that comes from your depths. This is where surrender comes in, not giving up, but giving over. Not my will, but thy will. Not what my small self wants, but what the larger self is calling me toward. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you aligned. It's the difference between rowing frantically against the current and rowing with it. In daily life, this shows up in decisions. The ego wants to choose based on fear or desire. The self wants to choose based on what serves your individuation, your becoming. They often lead in different directions. Learning to trust the self's guidance over the ego's demands is the work of a lifetime. These practices, shadow work, dream dialogue, archetypal awareness, following synchronicity, and listening to the self, these are the tools the spiritually awake use. Not once, but as an ongoing discipline. Because awakening isn't a destination. It's a continuous process of deepening. So what actually changes when you do this work? What's different about the life of someone who has seen what the spiritually awake see everything and nothing? Your external circumstances might not change dramatically. You still have to pay bills, deal with difficult people, face loss and limitation. But your relationship to all of it transforms completely. You stop living from the ego and start living from the self. This might sound abstract, but it has concrete effects. The ego lives defensively, always trying to protect itself, enhance itself, prove itself. The self lives creatively, expressing what wants to come through this particular person at this particular time. When you're living from the ego, you're constantly monitoring how you're doing. Am I winning? Do they like me? Am I enough? It's exhausting. Every interaction is a performance. Every situation is evaluated for threat or opportunity. You're never at rest. When you shift to the self, something relaxes. Not because your problems disappear, but because you're no longer taking everything so personally. The self isn't threatened by criticism because it doesn't need to maintain an image. It isn't desperate for approval because it doesn't derive its worth from others' opinions. Here's a paradox. The more you individuate, the more uniquely yourself you become. And the more you realize you're not separate from everything else. You become both more distinct and more connected. It's like each cell in a body, completely individual in its function, completely part of the whole organism. Your relationships transform. When you've faced your shadow, you stop projecting it onto others. You see people more clearly because you're not looking at them through the filter of your own unexamined material. You take responsibility for your reactions instead of blaming others for triggering you. You can actually be intimate because you're real. Not perfect, not polished, but authentic. You stop trying to be who you think people want and start showing up as who you are. Some people will leave. That's okay. The ones who stay will know you, and that kind of knowing is worth everything. Jung himself experienced this in his marriage. His wife Emma was initially threatened by his descent into the unconscious. She worried about his sanity. But as he emerged from that period more whole and authentic, their relationship deepened. She began her own Jungian analysis. They became true partners in exploring the psyche. Their marriage transformed from a conventional arrangement into a genuine meeting of souls. Your work becomes vocation. The word vocation comes from the Latin vocare, meaning to call. Your work isn't just what you do for money. It's a calling from the self. It's how you express your unique pattern in the world. This doesn't necessarily mean quitting your job and becoming an artist, though for some people it does. It means bringing your whole self to whatever you do. Finding the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need, as Frederick Buechner put it. Working not from obligation or ambition, but from alignment. Suffering doesn't disappear, but its meaning changes. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is what happens when you resist pain, when you tell yourself stories about how it shouldn't be happening, when you add a layer of victimhood or bitterness or why me on top of the actual experience. The awakened person still feels pain, grief, loss, disappointment. But there's less suffering because there's less resistance. There's an acceptance that this too is part of the human journey. There's trust that even this difficulty is serving your individuation in some way you might not yet understand. You become genuinely interested in your own life. Not in a narcissistic way, but with curiosity. What's trying to emerge right now? What's this situation teaching me? Where is growth wanting to happen? Your life becomes an adventure in consciousness rather than a problem to be solved. You develop what Jung called a religious attitude. Not necessarily religious in terms of organized faith, though it might include that. But religious in the root sense, religio, to bind back, to reconnect. You feel connected to something larger than yourself. Not as an idea, but as a lived experience. This might be experienced as connection to nature, to the universe, to humanity, to the divine, to the self, with a capital S. However you name it, you're no longer living in existential isolation. You're part of something vast and meaningful. Carl Jung empath and personal development reach their fullest expression here. The person who has done this deep work becomes naturally empathic. They can sense what others are carrying because they've felt their own depths. They can hold space for others' darkness because they've befriended their own shadow. They can guide others toward wholeness because they've walked that path themselves. You're no longer afraid of your own mind. The thoughts and images that arise, even disturbing ones, don't alarm you. You understand their communications from the unconscious. You have practices for engaging with them. You trust the self-regulating wisdom of the psyche. You become comfortable with paradox. The ego wants everything clear, black or white, good or bad. The self understands that truth contains contradictions. You can be strong and vulnerable, serious and playful, individual and connected. You don't need to resolve these paradoxes. You hold them. Here's perhaps the most profound shift. You realize you're not who you thought you were. All your life you've been identifying with your name, your body, your history, your personality. These are real, but they're not fundamental. What you really are is deeper than all of that. You're the awareness in which all experience arises. You're the consciousness that witnesses thoughts, feelings, sensations. You're the space in which your whole life story appears. This isn't a conceptual understanding. It's a direct recognition. And when it happens, even briefly, everything shifts. The person you thought you were becomes like a character in a play. You're still playing the role, but you know you're not limited to it. You're both utterly unique and completely universal. Your particular personality, with all its quirks and wounds and gifts, is unprecedented and will never occur again. That's true. And simultaneously, what you most deeply are is shared with all beings. The light of consciousness shining through these eyes is the same light shining through every pair of eyes. This realization brings profound compassion, not pity or superiority, but recognition. The person struggling in front of you is another version of the same consciousness you are. Their suffering is your suffering. Their joy is your joy. Not in some abstract way, but as a felt reality. You stop living for some future moment when everything will finally be okay. The ego is always postponing fulfillment. When I get the job, when I find the relationship, when I have enough money, when I'm successful, then I'll be happy. But that moment never comes, because the ego's nature is to be dissatisfied. The self lives now. It recognizes that this moment exactly as it is life. Not a rehearsal for life, not a stepping stone to real life. This is it. The awakened person doesn't withdraw from goals and plans and future thinking. But they don't wait to live. They're fully alive in the only time that exists now. This is the transformation. You're still you. Same body, mostly same personality. But you're no longer imprisoned by who you thought you had to be. You're free to become who you always were meant to be. You've become dangerous to systems of control because you're not motivated by fear. You've become useless to those who want to manipulate because you see through collective illusions. You've become a source of stability for others because you're grounded in something deeper than circumstances. You've joined an invisible lineage people throughout history who have done this work. The mystics, the depth psychologists, the wisdom teachers, the artists who saw truly. Not special people, just people who had the courage to look beneath the surface of things. Jung himself, toward the end of his life, was asked if he believed in God. He paused and said, "I don't believe. I know." Not know in an arrogant sense, but know from direct experience. He had encountered something real, something that couldn't be explained away or reduced to psychology. In his final years, Jung built a tower on the shores of Lake Zurich. He called it Bollingen. It was his sanctuary, his temple, his laboratory. He carved stones with his own hands, inscribed them with alchemical symbols and Latin phrases. He cooked simple meals. He sat by the fire. He listened to the depths. This tower became a physical manifestation of his inner work. Each addition to the structure represented a stage in his individuation. The original tower was his ego. The extensions represented the growth of consciousness. The whole complex became a mandala in stone, a symbol of the self. He knew he'd done something unprecedented. He'd created a map of the human psyche that honored both its darkness and its light. He'd shown that the goal of life wasn't to be perfect, but to be whole. Not to transcend our humanity, but to fully embrace it, shadows and all. You don't have to believe what Jung wrote. You don't have to believe what anyone writes about awakening. But you can do the work. You can face your shadow. You can dialogue with your dreams. You can recognize the archetypes. You can follow synchronicity. You can listen for the self. And in doing so, you'll see what the spiritually awake see. Not something mystical or supernatural. Just reality direct and unfiltered. The extraordinary, ordinary truth of what you are. You're not just a separate ego trying to survive in a hostile world. You're an expression of the universe coming to consciousness. You're the cosmos looking at itself through these particular eyes. You're both the wave and the ocean, the individual and the infinite, the personal and the eternal. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. Individuation is the work of a lifetime. Layer after layer, deeper and deeper. The self will continue to call you through symptoms and dreams and synchronicities and crises. Each time you think you figured it out, another layer appears. But now you have a map. Now you understand the journey. Now you know that when everything falls apart, it might be making space for something truer to emerge. Now you know that your darkness contains your light. Now you know you're not alone. The psyche is the greatest of all cosmic wonders, Jung wrote. And you are that wonder. Not as an idea, but as a living reality. You are not who you think you are. You are infinitely more. Stranger, darker, more luminous, more connected, more free. The transformation begins the moment you stop running from yourself and start walking toward the truth of what you are. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what part of yourself you're ready to finally meet. What aspect of your shadow are you willing to acknowledge? What archetype is calling to you? What synchronicity have you been ignoring? Your sharing might be exactly what another soul needs to hear to take their next step. If this journey resonates with your soul, subscribe to this channel for more explorations of depth, psychology, transformation, and the path to wholeness. Hit that bell so you don't miss future content. And share this with someone who needs to hear these truths. Until we meet again in the depths, may you walk courageously toward wholeness. May you befriend your darkness. May you trust your unfolding. May you become who you were always meant to be. The work continues. The journey deepens. Welcome home to yourself.